Hi, welcome to Music for the Soul podcast, where we talk honestly about difficult things. This is a place where music, hope, and healing come together. I'm Becky Nordquist.
And I'm Steve Siler, and we have a guest that I would like to introduce today, and it's me. So, welcome, me.
We didn't talk about the intro to the show today, but I seriously was like, what am I going to say? And then you pop on with that. That was surprising.
Yeah.
It was
thank
fresh.
You, me. I'm delighted to be here.
Well, I am so glad that you're here, obviously, for obvious reasons, but I'm super excited to talk about what we're going to talk about today, which something fresh is coming out from Music for the Soul in the form of a great new video. And I think while it's directed to one specific topic, which we typically have with Music for the Soul, I also think it can be applied, like many other things, to other topics. So would you like to share the big drum roll news with everyone?
Yes. I have a new music video for our song Whole in the Sight of God, and that's WHOLE. And it is what we hope will be an encouragement and a blessing for people who are loving a child with special needs, with a disability. And I would say the theme of the song, Whole in the Sight of God, it kind of hints at the idea that that applies to all kinds of brokenness, so not just to physical disability.
And I'm sure that, especially once people see this video and listen to it, they're going to find that it speaks to the broken places in their lives. I literally watched it and listened to it again this morning, and I just was overcome thinking, it helps that the song starts with my name, but
yeah, I just noticed that when we were editing. I was like, wait a minute.
And I'm like, oh my goodness. And I just closed my eyes and I listened. And I think many people, not just those who are walking with children or loved ones that have a disability or challenge, but I think those of us who have always felt like we aren't whole and that we are broken or damaged goods. And that's what is so incredible about the way that you write and the things that you write and how God uses them so much broader than what we could ever think or imagine. So would you be willing to share with us, how did you come to write this song? What played into this? What inspired you?
Well, this one's deeply personal. My wife and I were pregnant with our second child. We went to have a routine ultrasound. And during the ultrasound, we could see the technician was worried about something. And when the examination was over, she said, "I hate to be the one to tell you this." Well, obviously, those are not words you want to hear during an ultrasound. And she shared with us that there was something wrong with the child's spine. And at that point, my first instinct was to ask, is it a boy or a girl? And the reason why I asked that was because I knew right away that we were going to want to name the child and pray for the child by name. Her response was interesting. She said, "You want to know?" Which implied to me all sorts of things. We'll get into that later, I suppose. Anyway, the answer was yes. She told us it was a boy. I said, "Are you sure?" And then she proved it. So we named our son Henry, and we started to let family members and friends know to pray for Henry by name. It was a nightmare of a day. We went straight from there into the doctor's office, and his bedside manner left a little something to be desired. The first thing he said was, "I want you to know that I don't kill babies." Making an assumption about us and starting the conversation off in what I thought was a very hurtful, negative manner. From there, we went to a specialist that he sent us to all on the same day. And the specialist said, "You're going to have a very sick child and you need to seriously consider abortion. And if you're going to do that, you need to do it within the next few weeks because there are only a couple of places in the country. You're far enough along. There's only a couple of states in the country where you could still do that." So, and my wife just turned to me and just said, "This is a nightmare," with tears in her eyes. And of course, I called my parents, who lived 2 states away and immediately came, got in the car and came to us. Everything was moving so fast. And, we decided that, because of what the doctor had said, that we knew how we felt, but we felt like we needed to pray.
Yeah.
And so that's what we started doing. The possibility of a division in our family happened right away. We had 2 parents, one on each side of the family, who said that they were going to pray for us to abort. Our answer to that was, if that's all you can pray,
Mhm.
please don't.
Right.
Although we weren't sure right at that moment what the best choice
Mhm.
was. So we decided we would give it a week. And we decided something that I think was really helpful. We decided that we would pray separately. You go to God, I'll go to God, and in a week we'll come back together and share what we've heard from the Lord, and we'll make our
Mm.
decision then. And it was really interesting. I was watching the sun come up because, of course, there was a lot of sleeplessness that
Mm.
week. I was watching the sun come up, and a bird landed on a tree, a dogwood tree in our front yard. And I thought, he'll be able to see this sunrise. He'll be able to hear that bird sing. And I started making a list of all the things that my son would be able to do based on this diagnosis that I'd been given. And the Lord showed me that Henry had stepped off a curb in utero. Basically, he had an accident in utero. And I thought, if my daughter were hit by a car and they told me she'd never walk, I wouldn't say, okay, well, then just put her to sleep. And I realized in that moment that Meredith and I were Henry's sole defenders,
Mm.
basically, and we had to help him heal, whatever that meant. And so I went into this room at Star Song, which is where I was signed as a Christian staff writer. There was a folding chair, a rickety old upright piano, and exposed plumbing. It was not a romantic setting at all. There was no window. And I closed the door and I sat down and I wrote this song, Hole in the Side of God, basically as a way to minister to myself, to remind me that God was sending us a soul to care for. He was not sending us a broken body.
Mm.
And at that moment, I felt like, okay, I know what my decision is. Thankfully, my wife had come to exactly the same conclusion,
Mm.
and our story continues from there.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that with us today. I know a lot of tears and a lot of wrestling. There's grief involved there. There's
Yes.
so many emotions that come through life hits like
Mm.
that. I don't
Yeah,
ever
you're
think
right.
it
The grieving mixed in with a time that's supposed to be a celebration time.
right. It kind of strips away that euphoric naivety that typically a pregnancy can have. Instead, you're faced with a decision no one should ever have to make. And while grappling with the possibility of extensive suffering for your
Yes.
child
Yes.
and what it implicates for your future as a married couple and as a family. Can I just veer off the road a little bit here?
Sure.
And first of all, I just love how God spoke to you guys. I love that you both went to your Lord separately.
Mm.
You know, so often when we get married, we forget that that relationship and that walk is individual.
Yeah.
And we have to cultivate that relationship with Jesus on our own.
Mm.
And I love that you guys chose to do that. I think that was spirit led. And I just love that. Thanks for sharing that piece too and just how he spoke and moved. So, how did you guys navigate through that grief as a couple?
Well, my wife is really
Yes.
funny, and she had been a professional comedy writer before we moved to Nashville. And right from the beginning, we knew that humor was going to be incredibly important
Mm.
in navigating this. We also learned quickly that a diagnosis like this can quite often lead to marital difficulty and to divorce. So we kind of claimed right then and there that the D word would have no place in whatever was to come, which I think was really important. And then from there, you just kind of hang on. You know, it's a ride, it's a roller coaster ride, and with dips and turns and scares and exhilaration too. I mean, it was just a really wild ride. But I think naming right up front that we will remain committed in this journey and we will
Mhm.
remember to laugh because our family laughs,
Yeah.
and that we will stay ourselves in this. I think that's really, really important.
Mm. What did your support system look like then? I mean, so much as far as medical advances has happened between like, because what year was Henry born?
94.
Yeah. I mean, so much has happened since
Yes.
1994 in the realm of spina bifida and helps with that.
Mhm.
So already we're talking a serious difference as far as what you guys faced. But I mean, what kind of support system did you have then? And what did that look like for you guys navigating it through?
Well, we had a wonderful obstetrician. We were actually offered an in utero surgery that had never been performed anywhere in the world. And we were told if you decide to do this, you will be on the news. So
Mm,
consider that piece. My wife didn't want to do it. She felt like Henry was safe inside.
mm,
And of course, being the fixer, being the guy is like, oh, we if there's a chance, we got to do this, you know?
mm,
So we decided we would pray to the Lord and look for a sign of whether or not we should move forward. But we were going to take the attitude that we're going to move forward unless the Lord stops it. That's kind of what we
mhm,
decided. And we went in, and my wife got an ultrasound again, and the doctor said, "I am so sorry, but your uterus is in such a position is that we can't do the surgery." And so it's like, okay, that feels like a pretty solid answer. So I
yeah.
will choose peace, even though that isn't the decision that
Mm,
I wanted. Subsequently, we found out that Meredith's uncle knew the world's leading spina bifida doctor who was in Chicago.
oh,
And we were able to get on the phone with him. So you want to talk about support systems?
wow.
That was a
Wow.
pretty good support system.
Right.
We actually did go up to Chicago and met with him, and he told us, "I'm so glad you didn't choose the surgery." He said, "I think the safest place that Henry could be is where he is right now." So that was affirming, and we were grateful for that affirmation.
I'll say.
Yeah, so that was really, really a blessing. Our parents were, some of them were really supportive. Some of them were rather absent, but friends were great. We had a lot of prayer. Our church in California, we just moved from California to Nashville, and we had one of those little churches that you plug in under the Christmas tree, right, to light up.
Mhm.
And we had contacted our church back in California, and they pledged to pray for us since we were new in Nashville. We didn't really have a church family.
Mm,
And so we plugged that little Christmas church in our bedroom so that every time we woke up at night, we would see the lights through the church window and we would know that there was a
mm,
church praying for us.
mm,
So interesting, different kinds of support, but we certainly felt surrounded and loved. And as a matter of fact, when Star Song, where I was signed as a staff writer, put out an album called The 20 Promises of God, they dedicated it to Henry, and that was before he
mm.
was born. So there
Oh,
was certainly a warm blanket of support from friends and family.
wow, that's beautiful. Because we need that. I mean, we know that the Lord carries us through it all, but we also are created for community.
Yes.
And, I just want to encourage anyone who's listening who's walking this road to reach out. There are so many great support systems. And even if you don't know of them, they're, in today's age, we can look up support groups and people who are walking the same road. So back into our song focus here. We know why you wrote the song. Obviously the instant inspiration, and I think that's just beautiful that of course it started with your own heart, and we know where you wrote the song. What I would like to know is why was it like 10 years later before you recorded it?
Well, interesting. I had written the song while I was under contract to Star Song. We were subsequently acquired by EMI. And when I was ready to move on to another publishing company, I went to the head of EMI Publishing and I said, "Hey, I would like to request that you let me have this one copyright." I'd written 194 songs in 2 years. I'd like to have this one back because it's deeply personal. And his answer was, "Why would I do that for an unrecouped writer?" So, in other words, no was the answer. It's the only time in my life that I've considered throwing somebody out a second story window. I was furious. but I was able to just kind of keep that inside. And I just felt like, okay, not today. He's
Mm,
saying no, but I'm going to go with not today.
mm,
Later on, when he was replaced and a wonderful man named Rick Kua took his position, I knew that Rick was a songwriter and a musician. I wrote a letter and I reached out to Rick and asked him if told him the same story and asked him if I could have the copyright back. And his response was swift and absolutely yes was
mm,
his answer. So the main reason I didn't record it right away was because I didn't, I wanted to own it. I'll just, I don't know how to, it was mine and I wanted to own it for
mm,
whatever reason moving
mm,
forward. I knew that there would be something out ahead for it. And then, of course, subsequently, I started Music for the Soul, and it felt like a perfect fit to have a song for disability in our catalog. And we actually did a whole little project by the same name. And I think it was the second or third project that we released. And we got an endorsement for it from Johnny Erickson Tata, which was deeply meaningful to me. I felt like that was kind of a signal that
mm,
we hit the nail on the head. And then we moved on to other projects, which is kind of what you're doing when you're trying to build a ministry that serves
mm.
people around all different kinds of issues. So it just became part of the catalog.
And I think if our listeners care to, they can go back and listen to our podcast with Johnny Erickson Tata. And I believe we discussed this project a little bit on that podcast. So you're welcome to go back into the archives and look that up too if you're interested. It was a beautiful interview with her. So I gotta know, because you mentioned some of my most favorite people on the planet, like Scotty K and Kent and Philip. And I just want to know, what was the recording process like? Like the vocal session and the orchestra session, and just hearing it all come together. This song that grew from such pain in your own life and just a difficult season. What was that like to hear it all come together, and share about that, would you?
Well, we talk a lot on this program about how God likes to show up and work miracles that you weren't expecting. And there was a case of that in this recording. I asked Philip Kevin to do the string arrangement, not knowing that his brother had died from spina bifida, the
Wow.
exact same malady
Wow.
that Henry suffered with. And it had been an ongoing issue in his heart. When he was little, his mom would have to, they lived in a small town, and his mom would often have to leave and take his brother to the hospital in the city, which wound up creating a lot of time where he was apart from his mom. And he resented his brother because of that. Understandable, a
Mm.
small child feeling that
Sure.
way. He had never shared that with his mom.
Mm.
And when he got the chance to write this piece, he said that he was actually able to go to his mom, play her the song, talk about his feelings, and resolve that long held hurt in his heart over the way he'd felt about his brother.
Mm.
So at that point, the song hasn't even been released yet, and I feel like it's already done its work.
Right.
We didn't know this at the time. It came a little bit later, not too much later. Our engineer and co-producer on the song, Kent Hooper, he and his wife Jen had a child with a physical disability. So I feel like God was just all in the workings of
Mm.
this recording. And for me, the highlight moment of the actual recording process was when Scotty came in to sing. Um, Scott Crepane rips his chest open and throws
Mhm.
his heart out on the table and just goes
Mm.
for it when he sings something. You can hear the compassion and the
Mm.
passion in his
Yeah.
vocals. In this song, we got to the last verse, and I could hear Scotty beginning to lose it. I thought,
Mm.
he's getting ready to cry.
Mm.
And he did. And I almost wish we'd kept that on the final recording, but that would have been over
Mm.
the top, of course. But I did keep the line just before he loses it. It's in there. And if you can listen,
Mhm.
you can hear it. Okay. The
Yep.
waterworks are starting.
Mm.
And when he finished the session, I said, Scotty, what was it about that made you respond that way? And it was the verse about being deaf.
Mm.
And he said, as I was singing, I was thinking about what a gift music is in my life. And I
Mm.
was thinking, oh my word, there are some people who never on this earth get to hear music and
Mhm.
have the joy that I have in singing and playing it and hearing it. And
Mm.
he said it was just all too much. It was just all too much in that moment. So I feel like you hear that heart in the vocal,
Yeah, for
and
sure.
everybody did a really lovely job. I couldn't be happier. Even all these years
Mhm.
later, I could not be happier with the recording.
So, I've gotta ask too, what was the hardest part about raising a child with a disability?
You know, obviously it's grueling physically, a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of doctor's visits. Henry came home from the hospital 4 times in the first 4 years of his life. I don't need to go into detail on all that. Every disability brings with it its own regimen,
Sure.
if you will, that's very difficult. But for me, by far, the emotional part was harder. I knew that it was coming. For years, I knew this question was coming, but when Henry asked me, "Daddy, why did God make me this way?" You don't have an answer.
Ooh.
And I thought I could give him some Christian cliche,
Mm,
but the truth is, I don't know.
mm,
I thought, what if I'm just honest?
mm.
I said, I don't know, buddy. I don't know. And that was enough in that moment. And of course, it was a conversation that continued in many forms over the years. But being comfortable with the not knowing is hard. To me,
Yeah.
that's the hardest part because obviously you question God, you're angry with God, you
Mm,
don't understand how or why a little child should suffer like that. You're not particularly fond of suffering yourself as you
mhm.
have the daily interaction.
Yeah.
But then there are these wonderful surprises along the way.
Mm,
Lots of kids with spina bifida don't walk. It turned out that Henry was ultimately able to walk. When he would say, "Look at me, I'm a fast runner,"
mhm,
while he was swinging his arms and not running at all, that hurt a lot.
mm,
But when he was there was going to be a race at his elementary school. And of course, I was really worried he's going to finish dead last. How embarrassing for him because he thinks he's a fast runner.
mm,
And the race started, and he started, doing his fast shuffle. And a little girl fell down. And Henry stopped and went back and helped her up. And I thought, first of all, Lord, thank you for having that girl fall down. And thank you for my son's heart that he
mm,
was more concerned about helping her up than he was about winning the race, of course, which he never could have won. But just in that moment,
mm.
I felt like I saw God's care
Yeah.
in a really beautiful way.
Mm,
And I talked earlier about keeping the humor alive.
mhm,
Well, part of Henry's issue, it affected his bathroom time,
mhm.
and we had to do a lot of special things with bathroom stuff. And we've all experienced the joy of airplane bathrooms,
Oh
right?
my. Yes. Oh goodness. Yes.
Well, I had to help Henry in the bathroom on an airplane,
Oh my.
and it just wasn't big enough, folks. It just wasn't big enough. And I'm like, ooh, I'm hitting my elbows, I'm hitting my head, just crash, boom, bang. And Henry just sat there and laughed his head off. And I thought, this is where you get the joy, right?
There
This
it
is
is.
this is so funny. I mean, it was one of those moments where I realized this is slapstick at its finest, and I'm not enjoying it in the moment, but I realized this is really funny.
Meanwhile, the stewardess is outside the door
What's
going,
going
"What
on in
on
there?
earth? Do you need help in there?
Oh
Everything
no, we got
okay?"
it.
Oh my goodness. So tell us, how is Henry doing today?
He's doing beautifully. He's so much healthier than we had any right to expect.
Mm.
He is 30 and he is a high school English teacher, and he has also does the English as second language. He loves children. He's a
Mm.
helper. He's compassionate. His kids love him. His is the room they want to hang out in at lunchtime. So we couldn't be prouder. And of course, we're very, very grateful for our decision to bring him into the world because he is a blessing.
That is awesome, awesome to hear. So, why the video now? I mean, this is quite a few years later. I mean, it's obvious to me, but share with our listeners why now?
Well, I always wanted to do more with the song, and a video seemed like a good idea. And for a while, I wanted to, like be able to save up and spend, 30 or $40,000 and do some highly glossy produced video. And that wasn't happening and it didn't even feel like a priority with all the other things Music for the Soul has to pay for. And I thought, what if we just found some images that
Mm,
helped tell the story and put together something that way? We
mhm,
have a wonderful social media person, Kelsey Vredeveld, who does our work for us on social media. And I asked her if she would be willing to try and put something together for us. And she did a lovely job. I couldn't be happier with the result. And I feel like this is the kind of thing that's timeless. As we were putting this together, I was thinking, none of the children in this video were even alive when this song was written or recorded. And I know that daily new families get these kinds of diagnoses. New families are facing these kinds of challenges. It's, for us, it's part of the past part of our story, but so many face it daily. And I felt like if we can put this out to encourage and bless families who are loving a child with a disability and give them just an ounce of hope or a sense of companionship or support, then we really need to do that. It doesn't matter how long ago the song was written. It's not because of the song that it's timeless. It's because of the issue that it's timeless.
absolutely, and like I said earlier, it's so much more than I think a lot of people feel disabled in
Yeah,
ways in life and disabled by things that have happened to them and broken because
yeah,
of things that they've walked through. And like you walk, I've said it often, like sometimes I feel like I walk with a gimp.
yeah.
Like I have difficulty walking through every day. But the reminder that we're whole in Christ is
Mm,
so encouraging and empowering. And it's strengthening to get through another step and another
yes.
day, regardless of what it is that you're carrying.
The bridge says, none of us are perfect.
Mm.
Every life has a measure of trial.
Mhm.
But Father, we know how much you love every
Mm.
single child.
Yeah.
So that includes every listener that will hear and every
Mhm.
viewer that will see the video. And I hope they
Yes.
feel that.
Yes. I know that I definitely have. And it's ministered to me personally. And I thank you for that. And thank you for sharing your story today. Thank you so much for sharing the project. Why don't you tell us where we can go to see the video?
Well, of course, all the usual suspects. It's on YouTube, it's on Vimeo, it's on our website on the Hole in the Side of God page. So you can see it any of those places. And I would just make one request of people that if you see it and it blesses you at all, that you would prayerfully consider who you can share it with. It doesn't cost anything to watch it. And, our goal with everything we create is that it would serve and it would reach the people that the Lord intends it to
Mhm.
serve. So if you, listener, can be a part of that, then we would ask you to consider sharing the video.
As well as the other incredible songs that are on the Music for the Soul website. If you just take a few minutes to go there and look at the different topics, I'm sure that you're going to find something that strikes a chord with you. Not to be goofy because we are talking about music here, but
Oh, I see what you did there.
you see what I did there? It was pretty sneaky, but I'm sure that you will find something that hits home for you or someone that you know that may need just a slice of encouragement or just that, arm around the shoulder that says, "Hey, you're not alone in this." So, yeah, we just encourage you to take a second to check that out and share as you feel led to do so. So, thank you again so much for sharing everything and writing an incredible song, and Kelsey for coming up with a beautiful video. I know many lives will be blessed because of all of that. So, if you enjoyed today's podcast, please share it with a friend and give us a positive review on iTunes.
And please visit our website, musicforthesoul.org, where you can stream or download every song in our catalog, including Hole in the Side of God. Read our lyrics, our healing music guide, our blog posts, and much more. Thank you so much for listening. God bless.
Becky sits in the darkness, imagining the sky finding her rainbows in the blessings of life. Without crayons, she colors the world with a smile, opening eyes by just being a child. She is whole in the sight of God. She is whole in the sight of God. She can see all things through the eyes of the Spirit. She is whole in the sight of God. Johnny sits in his wheelchair as the children run and play, feeling the warm summer sun upon his face. He moves everyone with his laughter and light, and through prayers they lift up for him every night. He is whole in the sight of God. He is whole in the sight of God. He can run to all things on the path of the Spirit. He is whole in the sight of God. None of us is perfect. Every life has a measure of trial. But Father, we know how much you love every single child. Katie lives deep in silence where music never plays, finding her songs in the joys of each new day. Without notes, she's creating a new symphony, 'cause her gentle, sweet soul is its own melody. She is whole in the sight of God, whole in the sight of God. She can hear all things through the words of the Spirit. She is whole in His sight. We are whole